This is Dr. Martin's supplemental lecture on chapter 36.1. I'm also going to talk a little bit about section 2 in chapter 36. Let's talk a little bit about feeding relationships in ecosystems and how ecologists and other scientists try to study and analyze those relationships. The simplest way is to isolate a simple linear relationship between just a few members of a community or ecosystem. So if we look, for example, at the Arctic, there are a number of herbaceous plants, in other words, non-woody plants, that are the food source for the caribou. The caribou, in turn, is a prey item for packs of wolves. And so in this feeding relationship, notice that the arrows are actually going from the producers to first consumers and secondary consumers. The arrow is indicating the energy flow. Because the caribou certainly extracts energy from herbaceous plants, and the wolf, of course, extracts energy from the caribou. So that's really the flow of energy. Now, that's very simplistic because obviously in an ecosystem you're going to have a lot of relationships, and they are somewhat complex. And in order to more accurately describe all of the relationships, we actually will try to diagram what's called a food web. And so that is more encompassing, shows as many relationships in an ecosystem as we can analyze or we're able to detect. So in this illustration, this is from your textbook. And let me erase some of this. This is showing you a feeding relationship in the desert. And let me move this up so you can see everything. Okay, so a number of things are pretty obvious here. One is that we sort of divide the relationships into what are called trophic levels. I think we talked about that last time. Trophic is T-R-O-P-H-I-C, trophic levels. Trophic means feeding levels. So we talk about the producers, who are always the plants that are able to use photosynthesis to generate living material. The next layer, of course, are the consumers that feed on the producers, so they're called primary consumers. And then usually there's several other layers here. So there's going to be animals that feed on the primary consumers, so we call those secondary consumers. Most often in the ecosystem, there's going to be organisms that feed on the secondary consumers, so we call those tertiary consumers. And in this particular ecosystem, let me move this down so you can see at the very top, we actually have a fourth layer of consumers, which is called the quaternary consumer level, and that is illustrated by the red-tailed hawk. Now, the other thing that's clear here is that it's not a simplistic diagram. There's lots of arrows going in various directions. So it's referred to as a web because it's not, there's not a strict linear relationship here. Oftentimes, a single organism can act as a primary consumer and as a secondary consumer. For example, the grasshopper mouse, when it feeds on the herbaceous plants, it's considered a primary consumer, but it also feeds on grasshoppers, and so therefore we can put it into the secondary consumer level. Okay, so ecologists are interested in not just detailing the interrelationships here, but there's an important concept that's been derived from all of this data from various ecosystems, and that concept has to do with the fact that the primary consumers, this level here, really dictates the amount of consumers that are present in a given ecosystem. So in other words, if the producer level is very low, so there's not very many plants in a given ecosystem, that's not going to be able to support very many consumers, and certainly not up to the quaternary level. And the way that that relationship is sometimes illustrated is in using pyramids, ecological pyramids. And so I'm going to now move into section 2 of 36. And I'll turn this off for just a moment. Let's see, and what do I do with my eraser? Here we go. Okay. So let's look at the energy production by the producers. The way that ecologists actually describe energy content in producers and levels above that, they actually use what's called the biomass, which is the total mass of living tissue, represented by the organisms in that particular trophic level. And there's another term here. The total energy that is produced by a primary consumer, not a primary consumer, a producer level, is indicated by its biomass. But there's another term we also use, and that is primary productivity. So that refers to how productive the ecosystem is, which really means how much biomass is present in the producers in a given ecosystem. So for example, if you were to look at figure 36-5 in your textbook, you see, so this is figure 36.5. This is a figure that gives you this is a comparison of productivity in various ecosystems. And one important point from this diagram, or this graph actually, is that the tropical rainforest has the highest productivity of any plant ecosystem on the planet, and it's followed by, not very closely, but it is followed by the type of forest that we see in the eastern to the mid-south, and these are called temperate deciduous forest. So deciduous meaning that these are forests in which most of the trees drop their leaves during the winter. But again, the important thing here is that the tropical rainforest is an ecosystem that is very dense in living forms, and it's actually a focal point of a lot of research. There's just so much that we don't know about tropical rainforests, but certainly they are the most productive ecosystems on the planet. Okay, I'm going to stop here and take up the idea of ecological pyramids in the next video.